And welcome back once again to How to Survive 2025. I'm Brian Keene.
I'm Dacia M. Arnold.
I'm Jim Cobb.
And Dacia, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you guys so much for covering for me while I was out.
Yeah, Dacia was not with us last week. She had her anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go to Comic-Con. You did all kinds of fun stuff.
Did, and I turned 40.
You're a baby.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
It's the eye cream.
40's nothing.
Yeah, 40 is a piece of cake.
Oh, if only I were 40 again.
Oh, man, it doesn't feel any different, but I wonder if I've just felt 40 for so long that it was just no transition at all.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, I would say I didn't struggle with 40. And I didn't struggle with 50. With me, it's the middle decade years. Like 45, I had a tough time with. You know, but so now when you're off like that, do you listen to the episode that Jim and I recorded, or do you just like, nah, fuck that?
So it just came out today.
Right.
And I know you sent it when you recorded it. I've not listened yet. But I did see it pop up. And I was like, oh, I did not fit this into my schedule.
Okay. Well, we hope that our listeners listening today listened to it already. If they did, then they know that today we're going to do a nice change of pace. You may remember back in episode 14, we talked about doom scrolling and how an important part of preparedness is to take a break from preparedness. So we're going to help you with that today. What we're going to do, each of us have picked one movie, one TV show, and one book dealing with the topics that we talk about on this show, and we're gonna recommend them to you so that you have something to do when the grid goes down and the solar flare hits and the nukes are flying. You can have these things in your bunker to stay entertained. So, who wants us to? Should we start with book first?
Yeah.
We'll do book first.
I'll go first since I skipped out last week.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So my book pick for prepper fiction is Fantastic Land by, oh my goodness, why am I? Is it Mark Brockhaven? Mike?
I think so.
Mike. I think it's Mike. He's gonna kill me. Really, really nice guy. I didn't even know who he was until after I read the book. So Fantastic Land it's like an alternate universe Disney World.
Okay.
So it's in Florida. Imagine Helena hitting Disney World, and they didn't close the park. So a bunch of vacationers didn't go because they knew better, but all the workers showed up because they're par for the course. So all these high school, college age kids are locked down in this amusement park, this massive amusement park, and they start breaking off into sections and gangs and fighting over food and resources and stuff. It gets unhinged, out of control. Very, very entertaining, but from an emergency preparedness standpoint, and the author has a background in emergency preparedness. He's in emergency management. Totally mind-blowing. The things that you wouldn't consider being in a place of being stranded for any amount of time with people that you maybe know but don't know so well.
Right.
So it's really about what Jim preaches, is that intercommunication and those building the bonds of the people that you connect with on a daily basis. So really good book.
Does it get really tribal with the different groups?
It is very tribal. So they actually refer to themselves as tribes because of the way that the park is designed. So I think Holiday World is kind of broken up into different holidays, around the amusement park. And then some amusement parks have countries and continents that are themes. So same with Fantastic Land is broken up into little themes across the park, like the pirates and things like that. It gets pretty crazy.
Nice.
So Fantastic Land for our listeners at home, writing these down as we go. And awesome. I have not read that. I will check it out. It sounds like my sweet spot.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
It's a quick one.
Yeah. Jim, what was your pick?
Okay, mine is actually a 3-book series. It's referred to as the Victoria Emerson series by John Gilstrap. It's Crimson Phoenix, Blue Fire, White Smoke are the 3 books. what's nice is it's a complete series. You're not waiting for more to come out.
Mhm.
Okay, it's done. I've talked to John about that and asked him if he's going to do more, and the way he put it to me is he'd like to revisit it at some point, but he's got a lot of other projects in the
Mhm.
works.
Right.
What I really liked about this, okay, the backstory is there's a nuclear war or a nuclear launch, and Victoria Emerson is a congresswoman. All of the Congress critters are headed to this secret bunker. Okay, think Raven Rock or something along those lines.
Right.
When she gets there, she's told that she can go in, but her sons who are with her cannot. They're only taking the politicians, nobody else. So she leaves, takes her boys with her, and finds shelter elsewhere. Okay. The series progresses from there. She lands in a small Appalachian town, and it doesn't take long before a lot of the residents start to look at her for leadership, and she kind of rallies the troops, gets the community together. A lot of the themes that we talk about on here about, working together, trying to establish community, things like that. There's a lot that goes on in here. She has two sons with her. There's another son who was not with her at the time. He was in college, and he's working his way towards where they are. This is she this is a family of preppers, and that's referenced repeatedly throughout the series, that the wife, Victoria, her boys, and her husband, who has since died, he died prior to the start of the series, they've been preppers forever. They shoot, they hunt, they trap, they know how to survive, they know how to can food, all that kind of stuff. And she's sharing a lot of these skills with the people in this town. Meanwhile, we're getting scenes from inside the bunker where all these politicians are basically, you know, wanting to eat each other to be who can be the top dog and all that.
Right.
Mhm.
Literal cannibalism, but it's very
Mhm.
much how you would imagine a group of a few hundred politicians all crammed into one place. Okay.
Right.
One of the things that I really appreciate about this series, I read a lot of end of the world fiction, a lot of prepper fiction, a lot of survival stuff. This is some of the best written fiction I've read, in or out of that genre.
Oh, wow.
He can create tension like nobody I've ever read before. It's
Hmm.
rare that I am like on the edge of my seat, like, holy shit, what are they going to do now? You know, um, from an author standpoint, I learned a ton reading how he sets up a scene and how he plays things out. And there's not a dull moment throughout the entire series. It's phenomenally well done. It's well researched. I didn't come across anything really that jumped out at me like, nah, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. That would never,
Mhm.
any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough. It really, really well done.
So, do you recommend like blood pressure medication while you're reading the series? Sounds like.
There are a couple of scenes where I was, honest to God, I was very tense,
Hmm.
trying to, waiting to see how this was going to play out
Hmm.
with the interactions with the different characters and stuff.
And what's the name of the series again?
It's called the Victoria Emerson series.
Which
The
is the first book?
First book is Crimson Phoenix.
Crimson Phoenix. Okay.
Crimson Phoenix. That's the code phrase that the Secret Service is using when they go retrieve the politicians from their homes in the beginning. That's how the politicians know that this is for real. This is really happening.
I got to visit one of those decommissioned bunkers
Mm-hmm.
in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. In fact, my zombie novel Entombed, takes
Yep.
place during the zombie apocalypse, but there's no zombies in it. It's all about the people stuck in the bunker.
Mm-hmm.
I toured it several times, and I also got to do a behind the scenes tour that the public doesn't get.
Nice.
Get some questions answered that the public may not be privy to. I would not want to wait out a nuclear war scenario in one of those places. Is
No.
my conclusion. I would rather take my chances on the surface on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just way too much that can go wrong down there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a mini microcosm of our civilization with all the ills that come with it, you know. All right, my book, I told you guys that I was going to go with Stephen King's The Stand, which is, you know, that's the Lord of the Rings of post-apocalyptic fiction.
It is. It is.
But given that Steve has approved Chris Golden and I to publish an anthology of stories that are sequels to The Stand next year, I thought that might be self-serving if I did that. And I don't want our readers to think I'm self-serving. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to flip the script. You guys are preparedness experts, right?
I'm not prepared for this.
I try to avoid the term expert because that gets you, you know, that's a courtroom phrase.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with a book called Among Madmen. It's by Jim Starlin and Dana. I've never been sure how to pronounce her last name. Graziunas. I'm going to hold it up here for those watching it on YouTube. If the name Jim Starlin rings a bell, it's probably because you're a comic book fan. He's best known for his work at Marvel Comics in the 70s and 80s. He was the creator of, among other characters, Thanos, Warlock, you know, all kinds of great characters. It is out of print. You can find copies readily available on eBay for as low as $2 or $3. And it is a phenomenal, underappreciated sleeper hit of not post-apocalyptic, but apocalyptic fiction, meaning it's during the collapse.
Right.
Basically, there's a form of mental illness, a psychosis, that is transmitted virally, like the flu, like COVID. You never know who's going to catch it. And it turns people into murderous psychopaths. And unlike the zombie movies or the non-zombie movies like 28 Days Later, you know, where they're not dead, they're just rage-infected people, these people still have their full faculties. You know, they still have their presence of mind. In many ways, if anyone out there has read Crossed by Garth Ennis and my friend Jason Burrows, it's a precursor to Crossed. But it's this small town sheriff in a tiny little town in upstate New York. You know, the government has collapsed. He's trying to keep his town safe. He's got it, you know, blockaded and barricaded, and he's trying to keep the peace. And, you know, townspeople keep getting infected. And then his own wife gets infected. It becomes very much a human drama. It's ultra violent, very realistic. And there is a lot of prepping in the book, you know, and this came out back in the 80s. So it was before prepping was the phenomenon that it is now. So yeah, definitely recommend Among Madmen by Jim Starlin and Dana, Graziunas. And if you can't find that, then yes, The Stand by Stephen King, which you should anyway, once in your life.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what's next? TV show or movie?
TV?
TV. Let's do TV. Dacia, what'd you have?
This Revolution was a TV series in the mid 2010s. I couldn't name a single person on the cast, but I recognized them. So what the gentleman from Better Call Saul or no, Matt.
Which gentleman?
Anyway, I don't, because I never watched Better Call Saul, so I just assume he was on there because he was on Breaking Bad, the bad guy in Breaking Bad.
Oh, Gus.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's in the series, and he is, of course, the bad guy. He's like the bad guy and everything. He's a great bad guy. The premise is that this lab releases this nanotechnology into the atmosphere, and the nanotechnology is hyper intelligent and neutralizes all electricity across the globe. So no one has electricity at all. You can't charge it. There's no solar. There's nothing. And so it's about maybe 15 years later, some truth is coming to light on who might have answers to bringing the electricity back. And so it follows a young lady whose parents were involved in the initial blackout, and they might have even had pre-warning. I think they even might have developed the technology, but she has to travel around, and her father passes away. So she finds her deadbeat uncle, who's a POS, and which creates a lot of drama. But living in that no electricity, I thought was very, very interesting, very thought-provoking for me, being a young person and never really having to go without. It inspired a lot of my stories. I thought it was really, really cool concept.
How many seasons is it?
It's probably two
Yeah.
tops.
I think there's just two.
Is it available on streaming? Do you know?
I was able to watch it. I had to pay for it. I think I watched it on Amazon.
Okay.
Could be free.
I know
Revolution.
if you can't find it streaming, I know it's available on DVD, so you can get it through your library that way. Your interlibrary loan, if nothing else. One of the things that I liked about Revolution, particularly in the earliest episodes, was seeing how they had adapted old tech for new purposes. You know, and of course, I can't for the life of me think of a single example of it. But how they had repurposed things that you couldn't use the way it was intended, you know, like an old car or something like that, and what they had repurposed them for. I just thought that was really neat. You know, I would have loved to be in the writer's room to listen to the brainstorming on all that.
Right.
I think they did, like, they brought back steam engines and things like that were analog. I think when I prep, I always prep, that's what I prep for. I prep for not having electricity.
Well, it's a very realistic scenario. I mean, of all the scenarios we've talked about on this show, that's one of the far more likely to happen ones. You know?
Yeah. And prepping for no electricity doesn't necessarily have to be no electricity forever. You know, it's no electricity for a day, a week, 2 weeks, you know, things like that. Brian, you know Angie Hawks.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You know, she and I talk a lot. She writes for my magazines, and she's down in Texas, and she's always talking about the time the power went out for days on end. Because of ice storms and things like that, you know. And she's very fortunate. She is a hardcore prepper.
Awesome.
Kind of by default because she's really into homesteading.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear the after action reports that I'll get from her, you know, when things are back to normal and what they dealt with and how they overcame the challenges in that.
Yeah. Give her my best. I haven't talked to her in years, not since probably Shock Lines, I don't think.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, what was your pick for TV show?
TV show, well, my original one was something else, but I lent that to somebody. So I decided to go Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah is one of these post-apocalyptic shows that isn't as well known as a lot of the others. It kind of flew under the radar. It came out in the early 2000s. It was 2 seasons, and it was originally on Showtime. So it's a TV show format, but because it was for cable, you know, back then, there's nudity, there's profanity, there's, you know, it's not primetime TV. This isn't for kids. The premise of it is 15 years prior to the start of the show, a mysterious plague swept the globe and killed everybody, as they call it, over the age of innocence. Basically, if they had gone through puberty, they died. All that's left are prepubescent kids. 15 years later, these kids have grown up. Some of them have actually had their own kids at this point. They've got their own babies. And it's interesting to see how they adapted. without formal education, without the benefits of what we have, in our society today, how they overcame a lot of those challenges. Jeremiah is played by Luke Perry, and he is partnered with a guy named Curdy, who's played by Malcolm Jamal Warner. Both of them are phenomenal in this show. They're not given a lot to work with in some of these episodes. The writing is kind of up and down as the series goes on. The basic premise is these two guys are partnered up to work with this group of people that are in Thunder Mountain, which is an old NORAD facility. These are kids who they were children of people who worked there, and they stayed there when their parents died. They're led by a former child prodigy named Simon, I think, and they're trying to reach out to other communities and try to establish a society again, because everything is so insular. And Jeremiah and Curdy are given a vehicle, they're given supplies, and they're basically scouting. They go out and make contact with different communities. And it's fun to see how each little community has its own personality, its own little quirks, because it developed all on its own. There's one that largely avoids physical contact with one another because when they were kids, they believed that this plague or this virus was transmitted through physical contact. So their traditions developed such that they don't really contact one another, although they have kids, so there's some kind of contact going on. But there's an example, there's a scene where a young child falls down off a bike or something like that and is crying and crying and crying, and nobody will go over and pick the child up. And Curdy finally goes over and picks the kid up, and then he's like ostracized because how dare you touch another human being, Overall, the series is fun. There's 2 seasons. I've seen the first season a couple of times. I haven't made it all the way through the second season yet. And the second season is where there's a lot more revealing of how this virus developed and, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that in the first season, you're not really focused on that. It's more of the monster of the week type of format of season 1. Season 2 is when things start to get a little dicey.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I agree. I've only watched Jeremiah once, but I remember enjoying it immensely. Especially Malcolm Jamal Warner. If you only know him from the Cosby Show, the dude has such a much bigger range than that comedic role. But yeah, I should go back and revisit that. I'm sure it's available on Showtime and probably Amazon.
I think it's on Tubi or Prime, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. And Tubi's free, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Tubi rocks. That by far and away, that's my favorite streaming service.
Yeah.
Tubi is like think about it like this. Netflix and Prime are like Blockbuster back in the day. They have all the big hits and everything. Tubi is like going to your neighborhood gas station where you would have a couple of racks
on the discount rack
videos. Yeah. And there's movies there where you're like, it can't be legal to have this film. But yet they've got it. That's what Tubi is. Okay. It's so quirky and fun.
All right. Add it to the list.
Yeah, I watched a film called Meth Gator on Tubi a couple, I guess last week. And that's a film that, first of all, shouldn't exist. And yet it does. It actually ended up being great.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it another Elizabeth Banks, who did Cocaine Bear?
No.
Meth Gator.
Not that high end.
I've heard of Meth Gator. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's on Tubi. The one I picked was the one Jim wanted to pick, and pretty much anybody involved in the prepping community wants to pick. I said earlier that The Stand was the Lord of the Rings of prepper fiction. If The Sopranos is recognized as the greatest television show of all time, then this is the greatest prepper show of all time. I am, of course, talking about Jericho.
Yep.
Now, for our younger listeners, there are a number of TV series called Jericho. What you're looking for is the 2006 TV series. It originally aired on CBS. These days, you can stream it on Paramount Plus. You can get it on Amazon Prime. Apple TV has it. I think YouTube has it. The Roku channel has it. Hell, it's probably on Tubi as well. In Jericho, it takes place in this little town called Jericho, Kansas. There has been a nuclear attack on 23 American cities. That's the opening episode. We don't know if it's a war. We don't know who did this. We don't know if it's terrorism. And the first half of the first season really digs in on prepping and community and people coming together or fighting each other and surviving. Later on, it gets into other communities. Do they want Jericho's resources? What will they do to take Jericho's resources? Then the government shows up to save the day, but are they really, or are they just making things worse? It's very well written, very well thought out. It takes prepping seriously. It's realistic. It's a great action thriller. And as far as a human drama goes, it's phenomenal. Despite that, it never had really high ratings. It ran from September 2006 to March 2000. I guess the first season aired 2006. Then they canceled it. Well, the fans who were fans created such an uproar that CBS said, "Okay, we'll come back and we'll do a second season of 7 episodes."
Yep.
Which they did. Now that second season is also great, but the writing is still fantastic. The acting is still great, but it suffers from lack of support from the network. You can tell they cut the budget. Characters are suddenly gone.
Yep.
The sets are not as expansive. The plot is not as expansive. You can tell they were wrapping things up because they didn't think they would get a third season. And sure enough, they did not get a third season. Now, it wraps everything up in a nice, neat little bow at the end of season 2 if you want that. There are, and Jim, I don't know if you know this, Jericho fan that you are, there are 2 additional seasons. Season 3 and season 4, they're done as comic books.
Yep, just like they did with Buffy.
Yep, I'm the world's biggest comic book fan. I got to be honest, I did not enjoy the Jericho comics.
Okay.
I don't even remember what happened. I think for me, it got too much into the 2 main characters traveling around the country and dealing with all the different governments that have now popped up and are vying for control of the U.S. and not enough about Jericho, Kansas, which was always the sweet spot for me.
Right.
But yeah,
that show is just phenomenal in so many ways. I mean, who wouldn't want Johnston Green as their mayor? Really, I mean, some of the things that he said and did in that show, it's like I would not want to live anywhere else. I would want to live right where he is, because he's genuinely trying to take care of his community. I thought Skeet Ulrich was just phenomenally good in that role. If you only know him from Scream or something like that, forget it. He's light years beyond in this show. Very, very well done.
One of my favorite scenes ever from a television show is the end of Jericho season 1 when they're going to go to war with the neighboring town of New Bern over resources. And you're right, Mayor Johnston Green gets up on that pickup truck and starts to give a speech, and then Skeet Ulrich stands up and it's all set to an acoustic version of Foo Fighters Times Like These, and it is goosebump inducing.
Mhm.
Even if you've never
Wow.
seen the show, look this scene up on YouTube and you'll get goosebumps from it. Just, you know, everyday Americans, you know, farm workers and auto mechanics and data entry clerks and homemakers with their hunting rifles getting ready to go to war with
Mhm.
fellow Americans over who's got more corn out in the field, you know. It's just brilliant stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, highly recommended.
Yep.
And the
100%.
setting is ideal too, because one, Kansas is kind of left alone as far as nuclear goes. There's nothing anyone's going to gain by hitting Kansas. But the communities in Kansas are few and far between, but they are so tight knit. So I thought, like the premise that was perfect, but it's unrelatable to people outside of that area.
Right.
Mhm.
All right. So next up is movies.
Movies.
Dacia, what do you have for us?
I've mentioned this probably book in the past as a good prepper one, and it's not even a prepping. There's nothing prepper about this movie. Gone Girl. It was written by Gillian Flynn. It's really good, and I only want to call attention to the way and the resourcefulness that this woman squirrels away money, plays the long game, and plans an airtight plan to she's not escaping anything, but to leave a relationship.
Right.
Yep.
And most people are watching this to be like, oh, this crazy psycho bitch, you know. She's a smart psycho bitch. And I mean, if you're reading Gone Girl, you're watching Gone Girl, and you're in a situation where somebody has like a tight hand on your finances and you're not allowed to leave the house and you're not allowed to work. Girl, watch yourself a movie, read yourself a book, and take some notes and get the fuck out of there.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh no, for real. When we were going over our picks and you said, I want to go with Gone Girl, Jim and I got it right away. That is a prepper movie. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll goddamn guarantee that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yep.
All right. That's mine, though. Really easy.
Oh, it's a great pick. It's a great out of the box pick.
Also, someone needs to check on Gillian Flynn. That she's unhinged.
Jim, what was your pick?
Okay, mine is, again, this is one that might not be familiar to a lot of people. The title of it is Tomorrow When the War Began. It's often billed as or described as the Australian version of Red Dawn. And it kind of fits. You know, I get it. I understand the similarities, but there's a lot different as well. The basic premise is kind of the same. You've got a group of high school kids who go off on a camping trip for a couple of days. All of them kind of know each other, but they're not all friends with one another. Like, these two are good friends, and then this one is also a friend with this person who also knows this person, you know, kind of like that. They go off for a couple of days, and they're way out beyond where the sidewalk ends. They come back a couple of days later, and they start going to their houses, you know, drop people off, and there's nobody around. There's nobody at any houses. The power's off. The internet's off. There's nothing going on. One of them finds that their pet dog was dead, that had been just left. And eventually they discover the entire town are all gathered at the local fairgrounds. And they're under guard from some foreign army that's occupying the area. We're never told where this army is from. It's never made known to the viewer. It's based on a series of books by John Marsden. I've not read the books, so I don't know, you know, what happens after this movie ends. But the kids kind of fall into being rebels. It wasn't something they intended to do. One of the main characters, Ellie, she's trying to get close to the fairgrounds to try to figure out what's going on, and she gets discovered and shot at. She defends herself, ends up killing at least one of the soldiers, and it just kind of snowballs from there. It's very well acted. It's very entertaining. A lot of the characters, I mean, they're stock characters, but they're not. You've got the rebel bad boy. I think his name's Homer. He will remind you of the Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot more to him than just that. And in fact, several of the characters, I mean, they're stock teenage character. You've got the good girl, you've got the hyper religious one, you've got the rebel, you've got this, you've got that, but they all go way beyond the stereotype of that role. And it's just very well done. I wish they would have gone further with the series of movies, but apparently it just didn't market well.
Right.
I know they later did a TV series based on the books, but I've not seen it, so I don't know how it compares. But the movie itself, just as a standalone film, is really well done. I think it's on Tubi. I'm not sure where else. It bounces around to a few of the different streamers.
Okay, cool. When I told my wife, Mary, what my pick was for movie, she was surprised. She thought I would go with either Mad Max the Road Warrior or the original Red Dawn. But I didn't. I went with a very B movie, cult movie called Def Con 4, DEF Con 4. It's a 1985 Canadian post-apocalyptic movie. Basically, in a nutshell, there's 3 astronauts in outer space aboard a space station, and they're stuck up there when nuclear war breaks out. And like 2 months later, while they're basically surviving, they don't know who's alive on the ground. They don't know who's dead. They have no contact with Earth. But 2 months later, their spacecraft's guidance system forces them to return to Earth, and they land in a post-nuclear apocalypse where this fort has sort of been taken over by remnants of the military. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. And it becomes an action thriller from that point on. It is low budget, but it does a lot. It has a lot of heart. The special effects for the budget they had are fine. It's well acted. It's never going to win an Oscar, but it's exactly what you're looking for in a post-apocalyptic film. And the reason I'm picking it is because it has a prepper character, and he is the stereotypical prepper with his bunker and his booby traps and everything else. His name is Vinny. He's played by Canadian actor Maury Chaykin. And Vinny is my favorite fictional prepper of all time. And that's why I'm recommending this movie, just so you can watch Vinny.
Nice.
Yeah, DEFCON 4. It's available on Tubi. It's available on Prime. It's available just about anywhere. It's a 1985 film. What's funny is, as I said, it was made in Canada. The filmmakers thought that Defense Condition 4 was America's highest state of readiness. In real life, of course, it's the second lowest state of readiness.
Yeah.
But they didn't fact check that before they titled the movie.
That's cute. Huh.
I'm reminded of a memory that Mark Hamill once shared about filming Star Wars, where they were doing the scene where they come out of the trash compactor, and Mark Hamill says, aren't we supposed to be all messed up? Our hair all smutsed up and everything. And Harrison Ford leaned over and said, "Kid, this isn't that kind of movie." I feel like that's what DEFCON 4 is.
That's exactly what DEFCON 4 is like.
Oh, goodness gracious.
I have DEFCON 4. I haven't seen it yet. I have it as a 2-pack DVD partnered with Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Oh, another favorite of mine. I could not.
Never heard of that.
I could
Oh,
not just recommend it for this show because Hell Comes to Frogtown is just ridiculous in its post.
Sounds ridiculous.
But my old pal Roddy Piper
Mhm.
is in it. Everybody, of course, knows him. Obviously, as the wrestler, but they also know him from They Live.
Yep.
But this was another movie he made. I love They Live, but I got a soft spot for Hell Comes to Frogtown as well. It's ridiculous. Dacia, I don't even want to tell you about it.
No.
You just need to watch it.
Okay. I will. A lot of free time on my hands lately.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you don't need to watch the two the two Frogtown sequels, but you need to watch.
The first one. Okay.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you did. I know. I did want to do an honorable mention.
Yeah, okay.
Because yes, so somebody
Let's
else.
each do an honorable mention.
Sure.
So an honorable mention. So apart from the obvious TV series Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, I want to throw out there Outlander taught me a lot about field medicine that I didn't already know. So just like the primitive kind of taking care of yourself out in the bush, things like that. She finds penicillin growing, and just that process of her having the knowledge but not having the technology. In that era, also, I learned that the foot soldiers who were eating the wild onions and stuff out in the wild, while all the higher ups, the generals and everything, they're eating meat and not eating vegetables, their teeth were falling out because they were getting scurvy.
Okay.
And so I taught my children that they have to eat their vegetables so they don't get scurvy. So there's practical things. Yep. I also learned that mullein is a fuzzy little plant that doubles as some nature's toilet paper.
Yep.
So if you find some mullein grown, my neighbors have mullein growing. It's really exciting for me. Not that I'm going to use the tree line just to use the mullein. But I get excited thinking if I needed to, know where to get it.
There you go.
My honorable mention is a relatively new film called Leave the World Behind. It's 2023. Stars Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke, Mahershala Ali, Kevin Bacon. And Mary and I just watched it last night. It's on Netflix right now. Phenomenal prepper movie. It's not post-apocalyptic, it's apocalyptic.
Yep.
It's directed by Sam Esmail, who folks might know from the TV show Mr. Robot. It's a human drama set during an apocalypse. But really well done. The ending you're either going to love or hate. I loved it. Mary hated it. That's all I'm going to say about it. But
there's a lot of weird shit that happens in that movie.
Oh yeah.
I'm watching it tonight.
There's a lot of
I'm excited.
It's one of those, you kind of have to go into it very open-minded and pay attention, but don't overthink it, because there's a lot of it that it doesn't make sense until, without more context. It just, kind of comes out of left field.
Yep.
A newer movie. Did you watch Civil War with Kirsten Dunst?
Oh yeah.
Not yet.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it wasn't so much prepping as thought provoking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
sort of torn from tomorrow's headlines, one might say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. For my honorable mention, I'm not going to pick a book or a movie or a TV show. I'm going to talk about a subgenre of fiction very briefly.
Okay.
Back in, I know, Brian, I know you've read a lot of these. Back in the 80s, there was a whole subset of men's adventure that was all post-apocalyptic, all post-nuclear war. It kind of started with The Survivalist by Jerry and Sharon Ahern, and the success of that series led to dozens of these imitators, these clones. You had The Last Ranger by Craig Sargent. You had Traveler by D.B. Drum, which was a house name, and John Shirley wrote several of those. Outrider by Richard Harding. Warlord by Jason Frost. Just over and over and over. There's so many of these. Some of them really good, some of them not so good, some of them very up and down as the series went on, because a lot of them were written by independent authors. These were house names, these were pseudonyms that the publisher would put these series out, and various authors would jump in. I mean, Deathlands, I think they had a couple of dozen writers over the years doing those.
Horror writer Ido Van Belkom wrote a number of the
Yeah.
Deathlands novels.
Yep. As did Dwayne Wohowitz, who, I don't know if you know this, he just passed recently.
I saw that. Yeah, saw that online.
Okay, I was kind of surprised about that. If you're potentially interested in these older, like I said, these are all from the 80s, maybe the early 90s, I highly recommend this book called Pulp Apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
Now, I did not just pose for the cover. I'm actually in this book. Okay, they did an interview with me at one point talking about some of these different series. It's only like $6, $6 or $7 on Amazon, and it's phenomenal. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun for somebody like me who grew up reading this kind of stuff. This is just a half step away from the JCPenney Christmas catalog in terms of nostalgia. Okay. It's a lot of fun. The other book recommendation, since we're talking about these kind of movies, is World Gone Wild by David Moore. There's a new edition coming out. I'm not sure exactly when. I'd have to look on Amazon. It's a thick book. It lists hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of post-apocalyptic movies.
Oh.
Some of them well-known, some of them nobody's ever heard of. Like I was telling Brian before we started, if you're familiar with Grady Hendrix and his Paperbacks from Hell, it's the same type of thing, but instead of horror fiction, it's post-apocalyptic movies. There's a lot of interviews with cast and crew from these different movies. And he covers it. I mean, there's romance, there's action, there's sci-fi, there's horror, there's porn, if it's got a post-apocalyptic
porn.
Yep.
That's a whole genre.
That's a thing. I've been avoiding it myself, but
we're all adults.
Yeah, we're all adults here.
Right, for everyone that's not, I just want to describe the cover of that book. Can you hold it up again, Jim?
Pulp Apocalypse.
Oh my goodness, this is epic. So it's like if Bruce Willis and Mad Max was in Whitesnake. Like
that's the cover for 1990, The Bronx Warriors, I believe.
100%.
Oh my goodness,
classic post-apocalypse. Yep. It was when Escape from New York was really big.
Yep. There was that one, and then there was another one that the same actor did, same kind of setting, and I can't think of Exterminators or something like that.
Yep.
That he did.
Pulpy.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this little palate cleanser, this little break. Next week we will get back to the serious topics. 2025 approaching quickly. We told you at the start, this was always intended to be a limited series. It doesn't make sense to go into 2026 with a show called How to Survive 2025, because by then you'll have survived it. But we do have a few more topics we want to talk about before we wrap things once and for all. So we'll see you back here in the next week. In the meantime, Dacia, anything you want to tell them?
Oh, I want everyone to know that it's going to be okay.
Yes, it is. All right. We'll see you next week, folks.